All right. So again, this one is tough to try to factor. Okay. So I would just put it in my calculator and look at the graph. So when we look at our graph, what are we looking for to solve this? When we find those roots, or we call them zeros, what do I look at once I graph it on my calculator? Where it crosses the x-axis, right? Simon, you been here the whole time? Mm-hmm. Michael, you been here the whole time? Yeah. Okay. I thought you were queued up. I gotta change that. Make sure I did that right. Oh, I didn't mark you absent. Okay, I thought I did. All right, so go to your y equals to graph it. All right, x to the fourth minus 8x to the third plus 24x squared minus 32x plus 16. All right, so when we graph it, comes down and then goes back up. Okay, so I'm going to go to my table to see where it's what's going on there. So second graph. Well, let's do this first. I'll do that. Yeah, it's at 2. Looks like that's the only spot it hit. Okay, so that was second graph to get the table. And then the graph, I'll show that. Okay, and that looks kind of weird. It's kind of fat down here. You know, you don't see it go below the y-axis, so maybe, 2 works. I guess it's bouncing. It's hard to tell that that's bouncing off, but what did we say yesterday about multiplicity if it bounces off the x-axis? Even multiplicity, meaning it works at least how many times? Twice. Okay? So I'm going to check that, okay, by doing what? How do I check to see if it works twice? What did we do yesterday? Yeah, we did synthetic division, right? So I'm going to put 2 in the corner here for my synthetic division. Then I'm going to put 1, -8, 24, 32. I'm going to run out of room here. Let's do this. See if I can move that. And 16. 1, -8, 24, 30. -32. Don't forget the negative sign. Okay, so did I have to add any zeros there? Or is everything there that was supposed to be there? All right, please put your laptops down and pay attention. Watch as I go through this. This is not that difficult. Again, if you got your graphing calculator, it does most of the work for you. All right, so we got to do a little work here to see about multiplicity for this 2. Again, because it looks like it bounces off. It's just kind of weird looking because usually it's not that, it looks kind of flat there. But looking at our table, it goes through 1, 1, and 3, 1. So at the 2, that's where it's hitting. Okay? So I go 2 times 1 to get the 2, then I add those. And 2 times -6 to get -12, and then I add those. And 2 times 12 is 24, and I add those. And 2 times -8 is -16. And I'm supposed to get a 0 there, right? Okay, now let's see if it works a second time. So you put the 2 out front again, and and you just go to the -8 now. And see if you get a 0 again. So drop your 1, 2 times 1, then we add 2 times -4, and then we add and 2 times 4. So it does work twice, okay? And what Hannah said, it's even multiplicity, so it could work 4 times, because 4 is an even number, right? So I'm going to check to see if 2 works a third time. Okay. All right, so I just put the 2 out front again, and I just go to the 4 now. Don't have to put the line under the 0. 2 times 1 is 2, so that's a -2. 2 times that is -4. So it does work a third time, so it probably works a fourth time as well, and it does. So there's only one 0, all right? The 0 is 2, and it's got a multiplicity of 4. Okay? Again, so if I were to factor this, if 2 is the 0, what's the factor? How do I write the factors if I know what the 0 is? What we do in the past. We've done this. We've gone backwards. The factor always starts out x minus. And then you just use the number. So that's the factor, right? You guys know if you have a factor like that, that 2 is the 0, right? You set it equal to 0. But what's my exponent? So if I did x minus 2 to the 4th, I would get that, what I started with. Okay, you don't have to do that part. I just want you to understand that if you're supposed to factor something and you're having trouble factoring it, you could find the zeros, then write the factors, x minus in front of each one, and then you'd have it factored. That's kind of a backwards way of factoring something. All right? So basically, this week, this type of problem is you can put it in your calculator and find the zeros. If it bounces off, it works at least twice. If it goes straight through, it works once. What happens if we think it works an odd number of times? What's happening as it crosses? It's bending, right? We talked about that yesterday. All right, so that means if you see it bending as it crosses, then it works at least 3 times. It has odd multiplicity. Okay? So you had 5 problems for homework. Number 4 was already in factored form. Okay? So just going over that real quick. Your polynomial p of x was x cubed 2x plus 1 and 3x minus 12 squared. And you were supposed to find the zeros, right? The roots. Okay, so you just set them equal to 0. It's already factored for you. So you got x cubed equals 0, 2x plus 1 equals 0, and 3x minus 12 equals 0. And then you just solve for x to find your zeros when it's already factored. Okay? So here, how do I make this an x? What do I got to do to get rid of that cube? Cube root it, right? So you just go cube root of both sides. Well, when you have 0, square root, cube root, fourth root, any root of it's going to be what? 0, right? But what's its multiplicity? Whatever that exponent was is its multiplicity. All right? So this has a multiplicity of 3. If you want to just put here underneath 3 times, that tells me it works 3 times. You're telling me that, okay? On this one, I subtract 1 and then divide by 2. So that 0 is -1/2, which There's no exponent up there, so it has no multiplicity. It just works one time. Okay? You can hold on to that while we're going over the calculator, while we're going over this stuff. All right, for this one, we're going to add 12 on both sides. And then divide by 3. So we get 4 is the 0. Okay? And it works how many times? 2 times. So it has a multiplicity of 2. So if I were to look at this graph, at 4, it bounces off because it has even multiplicity. At -1/2, it goes straight through it. At 0, it bends as it crosses through the 0, if we were to look at it. Okay? So if it's in factors form, it's really easy. Just set each factor equals 0. If there's any exponents on them, that tells you the multiplicity. Okay? The rest of them were like the warm-up. You just can put them in your calculator and see what you get. What do we do? 45 next, right? And that was 1/2, -1/3, and -2. And the -2 worked twice. It had a multiplicity of 2. All right. What was next? 48. Okay. And that was 1/3. And then it was radical 2 and negative radical 2. I like to look at that one with you. Okay. So we got 3x squared minus 3x cubed, sorry, minus x squared. Minus 6x plus 2. Okay, that one might factor. You know, we could try to factor. Let's see if it groups for us. So x squared is the GCF for the first group, and -2 would be the GCF for the second group. And 3x cubed divided by x squared would be 3x, and -x squared divided by x squared is -1, and -6 divided by -2 is 3x, and 2 divided by -2 is -1. So it does factor, okay? You got the 3x minus 1, and the x squared minus 2. Remember, to find the zeros, you're setting it equal to 0, right? Then you can just solve each equation. 3x minus 1 is 0. Add 1. And divided by 3. There's your 1/3. Okay? And then for the x squared minus 2, make that red. We're going to add the 2. And then do what? What do I do to finish that one up? Square root, thank you. So we're going to square root both sides. Now when we do the square root, remember, we have to do that plus or minus. Okay? Now, if you're using your calculator, which is okay with me, remember. Okay? Go to our y equals. And it was 3x cubed minus x squared minus 6x plus 2. Graph and watch what it does here. Okay? So if I go to my table, here, I'll pull that out. And go to my table. I don't see any zeros in the y column. I see a -14 and a +4, so between -1 and -2 it crossed, so there's a 0 there. I see a +2 and a -2, so between 1 and 0 and 1, there's 1. Okay? right there. And then there's going to be one from a -2 to a 10. There's another one between 1 and 2. Okay? So I don't actually see the zeros, but I know there are some zeros. Oops, let's do this. You guys follow me? That makes sense? We had that on that quiz like the week, not last week's quiz, but the quiz before. If between two numbers, we were looking to see if there was a zero, if you got a positive and a negative, remember that problem? Okay, so I know there's zeros, and by looking at this, I know there's zeros, but they're not whole number zeros. Okay, so what could I do? Now, what do I do with my calculator to figure out? Austin? You want Austin, Mr. Lucky?
How do you know?
Because you guys are buddies, right? All right, so anyway, I can go to my calculator, go to my calculate menu, and find the zeros. Right, Z? So what button do I push? What two buttons do I push to find those zeros? Second, trace. Thank you. All right, and we're looking for number 2 this time. We're not looking for mins and maxes like we did before. All right, we're looking for the zeros because they didn't show up on my table. It's not a whole number. So I go to number 2. All right, and I'm just going to find, this one first, then I'll find that one, then I'll find that one. I'll go from left to right. Okay, so it's asking for left bound. Okay, so I have to go left of that point. So I have to get below the x-axis. That down here is left of this 0. All right, so I hit enter, and then right bound above it would be right of it. Okay, because it's, it's going like this. Okay, so left to right. So hit enter, and then the guess. So there's negative 1.4, which is the negative radical 2. Okay? So okay, if I go to find this one, I start over, second, trace, number 2, and then I'm going to move over this way. Now left of it is going to be above it. So I'm going to hit enter, and then right of it for this one will be below it. Then hit enter, and then guess. That should be by 1/3. 0.3 repeating is 1/3, right? Okay, and then if I go over to this one the same way, I'm going to get a positive 1.4. Okay? Now let me show you something else that will help you as you go. All right? So let's use the 1/3 and our synthetic division. So we got a 3, -1, a -6, and a 2. Okay, those are the 4 coefficients, right? Make sure we got 3, -1, -6, +2. All right, got it. And I'm going to put 1/3 in here. Drop the 3. 3 times a third is 3/3, which is 1. -1 plus 1 is 0. 1/3 times 0 is 0. -6 plus 0 is -6. 1/3 times -6 is -6/3. What's -6 divided by 3? -2. That's what I'm supposed to get, right? Supposed to get a 0. Now, if you don't want to take the time to find those other 2 on the calculator, you can solve this equation. Okay? Remember, this was 3x cubed. So when you do 1 time synthetic division, what's this x? If this started out as an x cubed, that's an x squared, right? So this problem here is 3x squared plus 0x minus 6 equals 0. Okay? When the b is 0, you don't have to worry about it. And you can just solve that. We're going to add the 6, divide by the 3, and then what do I do to both sides? Square root, which gives me that square root of 2 again, and positive and negative square root of 2. Okay? So there's things you can do if you're stuck to try to find those zeros. Okay? You can always get it to a quadratic and then solve the quadratic. You can use the quadratic formula if you want. Right, Wagner? Questions? All right, so there's other things you can do. Again, if you want to rely on the calculator, that's fine. Okay? Sometimes, as we go further in this, all right, we're going to get to spots where the calculator might not be able to help you. So you're going to have to do this. Because you can't see the non-real. We're going to get to a point where there's non-real zeros. All these have been real zeros so far. Okay? We're going to have to do that. So I just wanted to show you that. Okay? Any questions so far? Anybody having issues with their calculator still? Okay. All right, so that was 48. And then we just had 60, right? Is that the last one we did? And 60 was negative 3/2, 0, 2, and 7/3. Negative 3/2, remember, is negative 1.5. 7/3 would be 2 1/3, which is 2.3 repeating. Okay? Does anybody need to see 60? Okay, so that's all we're doing is that type of problems for the quiz Friday. All right? There's only 4 problems. All right? So you have a practice quiz today. And then we'll go over and have our quiz Friday. No questions?